The back room lasted 4 minutes. Danielle would never be able to explain later how she knew it was 4 minutes and not 4 hours. Time had stopped meaning anything the second the window gave way. It didn't break. That was the part she couldn't stop thinking about. It didn't shatter like glass in a movie. It just came apart, quietly, like something that had already decided the wood wasn't going to be a problem for very long. Then it was just her. Just her, in the dark, in the trees, running toward the boat launch because it was the only direction that wasn't the cabin. She found Tyler first. He'd made it almost to the tree line, 20 feet from the porch, no more. He was face down in the mud with his arms thrown out in front of him, like he was still reaching for something, still trying to get one hand further than the other. She almost didn't see him. The lightning did that for her, one white flash that turned the whole clearing into a photograph she would carry for the rest of her life, however long that turned out to be. His back wasn't right, not at first look. And then the lightning came again and stayed a half-second too long, and she saw exactly why. Something from the campsite toolbox, one of the steel tent stakes they'd used that afternoon to pitch the extra tarp, was buried at the base of his neck at an angle that had nothing to do with accident. His hand was still curled like it had been reaching for it, or reaching past it, like some part of him had tried to pull it out and run anyway. Real Scary Stories After Dark from NNOV8 Entertainment. She made a sound she didn't recognize as her own voice and kept running, because there was nothing here for her anymore. Nothing except a reason to run faster. Ben was in the equipment shed. She hadn't meant to go in. The door was already open, hanging on one hinge, and habit, just 4 years of her being the person who made sure everyone else was okay, pulled her through it before her brain caught up to her feet. 6'3", built like he carried refrigerators for exercise. None of that had mattered. He was hanging from the rafter beam, rope from the boat rigging looped and cinched with the same patience the whole night had shown, and beneath him a slow dark line ran off his fingertips and gathered in a still, spreading circle on the concrete floor. The shed was full of the smell of copper and gasoline, and Danielle put both hands over her mouth and backed out into the rain before the rest of the picture could finish assembling itself in her mind. She didn't scream. She'd learn later that this was the detail that saved her, that somewhere in the animal part of her brain, she'd understood that screaming was a luxury for people who weren't being hunted. She found Tasha by the water. Tasha, who'd seen him first. Tasha, who'd been right, who'd been the only one of them looking in the right direction all night, while the rest of them laughed and drank and made jokes about Hennessy. She was half in the lake, the current pulling gently at her sleeve, like it was trying to be gentle about something that hadn't been gentle at all. Her forearms were open in 3 long lines each, wrist to elbow, the kind of wounds you got from lifting your arms up in front of your face and meaning it. She'd fought. She'd actually fought. Her books. She'd had books with her, always, even camping, even here, were scattered across the mud in a loose fan, pages already softening in the rain. And Danielle thought, absurdly, she would hate that. She would hate that her books got ruined. And then she thought nothing at all for a while, because there wasn't room in her head for both grief and survival was winning. She kept moving because Tasha would have told her to. Laptops are replaceable. Toni Morrison is not. That was the whole speech, dead serious, the time the dorm fire alarm went off, and Tasha went back up 2 flights for her book bag, while everybody else stood in the parking lot in their socks. Danielle didn't laugh. She didn't have anything left to laugh with, but she held on to the sound of Tasha's voice saying it, because it was the only piece of the night that still felt like it belonged to a person and not to whatever was doing this. She found Marcus by the truck. He'd almost made it. The keys were still in his hand. She could see them, catching what little light there was. He was still gripping them tightly, just as he gripped his steering wheel. He was training for his next race. It wasn't logical to his friends, but he would always say that logic would eventually show up and save him. Every problem has a logical solution. Not this one. She didn't remember crossing the last 20 feet to him. She didn't remember kneeling down, or the sound she made, or how long she stayed there with her hand flat against his chest, like she could put back whatever the night had taken out of it. She only remembered that at some point the rain had stopped feeling cold, because nothing felt like anything anymore, and that the woods around her had gone very, very quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't empty, the kind of quiet that's waiting. A twig snapped. Not close, not yet, but close enough that the sound found her before her own thoughts could. Danielle Brooks, Watts, Los Angeles, 22 years old, engaged in a running argument with the entire concept of fear since she was old enough to walk, didn't scream, didn't run. Some animal part of her brain that had gotten her past Tyler, past Ben, past Tasha, made the decision before the rest of her caught up to it. She went down into the mud beside Marcus, down against him, and her hand found what was left of his chest before she let herself think about what she was doing with it. She pressed her palm flat, then her sleeve, then the side of her face, until the warmth of him, the only warmth left in the whole clearing, was smeared down her cheek and along her jaw, and she was no longer sure, in the dark, where he ended and she began. Please. She didn't know who she was praying to. She'd stopped believing in anything organized around the third body. But the word kept forming anyway, over and over, silent, a rhythm to hold on to instead of a scream. Please, please let him think I'm already gone. Another twig, louder, closer. She matched her breathing to the rain, shallow, shallow, nothing that would lift her shoulders, nothing that would show. Her eyes stayed open, because closing them felt like giving something up she wasn't ready to give up yet, and she fixed them on a single spot of black nothing past Marcus's shoulder, and made herself as still as everyone else already was. Crunch, wet leaves, boot in mud, weight settling, unhurried, the way everything about tonight had been unhurried. Crunch. She could feel her own pulse in her throat, in her wrists, in the hand still pressed to Marcus's chest, and she prayed it wasn't loud enough to hear over the rain. She prayed the dark and the blood and the stillness would be enough. She prayed for the footsteps to bend left, toward the truck, toward anywhere that wasn't 6 feet from where she lay. Crunch. Closer. The footsteps didn't change direction. Danielle held her breath, held her stillness, held the last image she had, Marcus's keys, still in his hand, still catching what little light the sky had left to give, and did not move, and did not blink, and waited to find out if praying had ever once, for anyone, actually worked.